Thank you for clicking on my face. You know I love you for that. Glad I haven't bored you yet. And before we get started, as usual, I do want to thank the sponsor of this video. This video is brought to you by the Sony Bravia XR A80K 4K HDR OLED TV. Because in this modern day and age of more and more film premiering on streaming services, we all gotta up our TV game if TVs are gonna take the place of movie theater screens for some film. The cognitive processor XR understands how humans see the real world to deliver intense contrast with deep blacks, high peak brightness, and natural colors. It understands how humans see the real world. If the robots are listening, we do appreciate everything you do for our lives to make our lives easier. Just so it's out there. In reality, if you haven't rocked an OLED TV yet, the only danger of it is once you do, you will not go back to anything other than OLED. So click the link below to up your TV game. Bring your living room into the world of a theatrical experience. And there it is, a sponsorship so epic, it changed my shirt. But now we talk about the premiere, pilot episode, whatever you want to call it, for House of the Dragon. So House of the Dragon is a prequel series that takes place about 200 years before the events of Game of Thrones, based on the George R.R. Martin book, Fire and Blood, I think it's called. I should check. Yep, Fire and Blood. The cover of the book says it takes place 300 years before, so fuck if I know. And of the shows coming out around this time, House of the Dragon was tops for me. That and the Better Call Saul, the final season of Better Call Saul finale. Which I do still want to get you a video on. I'll try to do it this week. It all depends on how this week looks for me. Life shit, I won't bore you with it. If not this week, next week, but eventually I do want to give you a video on Better Call Saul, because that is just great character drama. It looks like we might get great character drama with House of the Dragon. I was looking forward to it because, let's face it, anything that can wash the taste out of our mouths from the finale, you know, at least I'm down for that. Because when Game of Thrones was at its top, at its peak, it was an incredible show. And there is a correlation between Game of Thrones being great, and they had George R.R. Martin's works to go off of, and Game of Thrones slipping and falling, and they didn't anymore. And this being based off of a George R.R. Martin book, I was like, okay, I'm down for this. And House of the Dragon sets up a world that looks like it's aiming to give us what I personally liked most about Game of Thrones, which was, wait for it, a Game of Thrones. When people were plotting, scheming, backstabbing, playing the Game of Thrones, all for a chance to sit on this horrid smelted piece of sword seat. That was what I loved about Game of Thrones. The walking north, never really cared. I wanted to care. I really tried to care. I tried my best, but I never really cared about the zombies as much as the political scheming. And there were some cool things that happened with that whole situation, absolutely. But I never cared about it as much as when the characters in the show were playing the namesake, the Game of Thrones. And this looks to bring that political scheming, but all in one family, within the Targaryens. And other people are going to choose sides between the Targaryens. It's going to be Daemon Targaryen and Rhaenyra. The names are still new. It'll take me a second. I've already seen people say, oh, this is a slow burn. It's not as exciting or action-packed as Game of Thrones. I'm like, pretty sure this pilot episode had more action than the pilot episode of Game of Thrones. I mean, granted, jousting, yeah, but still more action. We're all gonna miss characters like Tyrion Lannister, absolutely. There's no Tyrion Lannister style character that was like, oh, that's the guy immediately. But it has a great assortment of characters that looks to give promise to this world that's going to boil, simmer, and spill over into war, civil war. That's a lot of the tension in Westeros. Westeros is a largely patriarchal society. It's like, a woman cannot take the throne. Just kind of weird how Cersei was like, I'll do it. Okay, I did it. I mean, granted, she had a big zombie monster with her, but you know, I feel like there should have been more. Adam Smith as Daemon Targaryen was incredible. I haven't read the books. I don't know if he's book accurate, but I thought he was great in this show, well, in this episode of a show. And when I heard Matt Smith was cast in this show that has to do with Targaryens, I was like, oh yeah, that tracks. There is no man alive that's more Targaryen looking than Matt Smith. He's that side of the coin. You know the phrase, every time a Targaryen's born, the gods flip a coin. Which, if I really think about it, we've only ever really seen the bad side of the coin. We've seen those Targaryens. Looks like Rhaegar Targaryen was pretty decent, but history is written by the victors, so they were like, no, he's a total asshole. Because we say so. But all the rest, Viserys, you hear about the Mad King. Daenerys was like, you know what, I will barbecue people. Most of the Targaryens have been shit to the point where you start doubting the phrase because you're like, is it really a coin flip? Is it 50-50 or is it 80-20? Feels more like loaded dice than a coin to me. But in the show, you see decent Targaryen folk. I guess I should rephrase decent. Decent for Westeros. And the thing I was concerned about, I was concerned like, okay, we're gonna revisit Westeros, but it's, you know, 2022. It's now. Will social media tolerate the brutality, the zeitgeist of Westeros? I don't know, it's yet to be seen. But I was impressed with the facts like, oh yeah, this is a raw, horrid, horrific world still. And that's what it's supposed to be, you know? We're not supposed to look at Westeros and be like, we should be more like that. I was impressed that they kept the familiar brutality of Westeros and didn't wrap it in bubble wrap, so to speak. Love the music too. I love the fact that you hear some Game of Thrones mixed in there, but largely a lot of Targaryen music. I thought the Targaryen theme, or the song that became, I don't know if it was supposed to be the Targaryen theme, but it largely became the Targaryen theme in Game of Thrones. You hear that theme in here, and it feels Game of Thrones, but also feels new, and it feels, most importantly, very Targaryen. There was some lore expansion too that I really like when he was talking about Aegon Targaryen's dream that he called the Song of Ice and Fire. Can't help but chuckle at the fact that in canon, Aegon Targaryen had a dream, a vision of when the show Game of Thrones would die. Iron Throne got a facelift. Wow, that was a lot more swords. Which, yeah, if you see the throne from the original Game of Thrones series, and you see the conceptual throne that George R.R. Martin intended, it's like, yup, those are different. You can tell they were like, we want to be more in line with what George R.R. Martin envisioned, but we can't just make an entirely different throne. It would feel different. You know, it would feel like a different world, a different universe, and it's supposed to feel like it works in tandem with Game of Thrones. It does feel like, all right, we had the decoration, we had the throne, and they were like, needs something else. Kind of like you're setting up Christmas decorations or something. You're like, it needs something else. I put a little holly on the sides. Yeah, fine, that's good. It does look more menacing, though. I'll say that. Man, that is a conqueror's throne. That's a Targaryen throne right there. You know, my big takeaway, the yellow dragon was named Syrax, if I was hearing it correctly. I believe it sounded like the yellow dragon's name was Syrax. Tell me the red dragon's name is Sector. Yellow Cyrax, that can't be a coincidence. George R.R. Martin plays Mortal Kombat. Confirmed. I mean, why wouldn't he? Dude murders characters in novels for a living. Why would he not murder video game characters in Mortal Kombat? It just only makes sense. So House of the Dragon was great setup, great intrigue. It's a prequel series in the world of Westeros, which, judging by the premiere, looks to bring the world of Westeros back to what I liked about Game of Thrones. And let's face it, it's a family that I've always felt in the world of Game of Thrones, they were always the most interesting family, at least had the most interesting history. All right, so the premiere of House of the Dragons on HBO. Have you seen it? What did you think about it? Whatever you thought, comment below, let me know. And as always, if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, click right here to see more.